This is Here in My Time, and I am so thankful and excited you've tuned in to this very first season of my brand new podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Hunt, and I am so honored to say that this first season of 16 episodes, hour-long weekly segments, is actually sponsored by one of my favorite stores in downtown Huntington, Indiana. Can you tell the excitement in my voice? That's right, you've guessed it, Turn the Page Books and Music Store. Rex is the owner of this fine establishment. This is the place to go if you are looking for your next read or to add to your vinyl collection. It is jam-packed full of used books, everything from fiction to nonfiction, and of course a huge variety of records from rock and roll to Taylor Swift. And let me tell you, Rex is the perfect owner because he is a music library. If you need help picking out your first record or maybe adding to your collection, this is the man for you. Whenever you walk in the door, music is playing constantly. You got perfect lighting, you've got the wooden floors. It's the perfect vibe to enjoy your day in. So make sure you stop in and visit, and also follow him on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you so much, Rex, for your support. It means the world to me. Now on to the episode. This is Here in My Time, the podcast dedicated to bridging the gap between generations. I'm your host, Lauren Hunt, a local personal journalist, photographer, documentarian, and a lover of people and their stories, located right here in Wabash, Indiana. Today on Here in My Time, I have my daddy-o on the podcast, and I did not drag him kicking and screaming, believe it or not. I did get him to walk out here to the barn, so that works really well. Hi, Daddy-o.
Hello.
We're gonna try to be normal. Try is the key. And that's the hard part of it all. But yeah, so I thought it'd be fun to have my dad on because I'm a lot like my dad. A lot of people say I look like my dad and I act like my dad a lot. So it'd be fun to kind of talk about his life and music and just, I don't know what we're going to get into today. What do you think we'll get into today? Probably. Yeah. So let's start off with talking about when and where you were born and like kind of about your life growing up.
Okay. Well, I was born in Wabash in 1964, the night before Halloween, real close to a Halloween baby. But yeah, I was born in October of 64, and at that time we lived in Rowan. And so that's where I started, was in Rowan, and then we moved into Wabash later on in my life.
So I know about my grandparents, but talk to me a little bit about Mama and Papa. Kind of explain their dynamic and like the family dynamic.
Okay. Well, my dad, of course, he was born in Kentucky, and my mom was born in West Virginia, so that's a double dose of trouble right there. But anyway, both of them worked. My mom worked in a factory, and my dad started out painting and doing different things like that, and then eventually got in and started working in a factory too. But as far as our family dynamics, I have a brother, and so the four of us was the normal typical family, not raised in any riches or anything like that. Actually, kind of less rich when we first were born and stuff, according to talking to Mom and how things started. But then later on in life, both of them got good jobs and was able to move along pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know I have to say, because this is going to be the perfect dynamic of like personalities, you got to tell them the story of when Papa got the car stuck in the garage. That's the perfect example of what kind of dynamic that you guys are. Yeah.
We had a 2-car garage, and the weather outside was not real good the day that, and he was wanting to clean the car and get it all. It was a new car, so he was pretty proud of it. So he pulled it in, and he pulled in the garage and turned it sideways in the garage. Of course, it went in easy, but getting it back out of the garage took several hours because there was a post that prevented the natural turn of the car. So we had to navigate around that post and get it out of the garage. And anyway, every once in a while, us boys and my mom would go into the car or into the house, and we would laugh, but there was no way we could laugh in front of Dad at that time because he was not a happy camper by any means, So it was best if we didn't share our view of it, of it being so funny.
It was probably very stressful at the time.
It was.
A lot of 12-point turns.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. I can only imagine. Because Papa, what people don't know is Papa could pretty much do anything. That's the thing. He could do anything. He could build anything. Yep. And all that could go. But when something wasn't working, you couldn't laugh in front of him. Cause it was like,
he had a short fuse at times like that. So, yeah.
Which I think it kind of run through the family a little bit.
Maybe just a tad.
Just a tad. But nothing bad. It's just funny story because I could see Mama running in the house and just has to laugh a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Because she knew probably that was going to happen when he tried it.
Yeah.
But it just is. But okay, so after Mama, you spent a lot of time with Mama. I mean, I would say Uncle Dwayne. Uncle Dwayne was more of a daddy's boy, and you were more of a mama's boy, just because of the two dynamics of who you guys were.
I was the youngest, and so my brother Dwayne, he and my dad, he's just like my dad when it comes to he can make anything, he can do anything, he can build anything, fix anything. I didn't get any of those traits.
Well, you can make things. It just is a different. You can design stuff. Well, and for the people that don't know, is we're sitting in the barn that he designed inside, and I'll have to either put photos up or something, but he's got it all designed, and he did some of the building within it, and then we had some more people come in to help get it done quicker. But no, I think you can build. You build stuff all around the house, so but different.
Yeah, different. Yes, this is true. Yeah.
But you spent a lot of time with Grandma. So what did you do with Grandma all the time?
Well, a lot of times I would help her because Mom's health wasn't the greatest, so I would try to help her. There was days that I stayed home from school to be with her when she was real sick and stuff like that. So yes, we were pretty close when it comes to that. I helped her in the house do whatever she wanted to do. If if she wanted to rearrange furniture, if she wanted to put different stuff on the walls and all of those things, I would help her do that. And I mean, I spent some time out in the garage. I mean, I went out and done some things, but a lot of my time was spent helping Mom and those types of things.
Well, I feel like when you have like two kids, one of them gravitates towards one and one gravitates towards the other. It's like me and Ashley. Ashley's my sister, and like I'm like Mom, and I'm a lot like you. But growing up, I was looking at you as far as that, and as I've gotten older, I've become more of a, looking at Mom, how to be a woman and how to be a good, just live that life out as a girl. And it's funny to see that, but it's fun to see both of us, because Ashley has Mom tendencies, and then she has your tendencies where you're like, it's cool to see that. So but well, I was going to say, because you started out and you said you lived in Rowan. We have to introduce one other character to that story when you were living in Rowan, and that was a woman named Tree.
Yes, yeah.
You got to tell them about who Tree is.
Well, Tree was well, at that time, we thought she was an older woman, but she was not as old as I am now. But, for our family, she was older, and she was a lady that would babysit for people. And of course, she started, I believe, babysitting for me when I was 3 weeks old. And so she started babysitting for me. Well, along the way, her and her husband Lawrence kind of like adopted me as their boy, and they would tell everybody I was their boy. That I wasn't a kid that they babysat for, but I was their boy.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of neat because they couldn't have children, and I got to be their child, and that was kind of a neat thing to have somebody like that take me places, make me sing for people, and all of these different things. We had a good time. They didn't have what I would call they didn't have a lot of money, but they enjoyed life. Mm-hmm. I mean, fully enjoyed life, was totally happy. Mm-hmm. And that was a sure sign to show somebody that it doesn't take money to be happy. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the things that I learned from them, that money didn't make you happy. Mm-hmm. It can provide things for you, but that's not happiness. Mm-hmm. And they would show you that, mm-hmm. That it wasn't happiness. Money didn't make their happiness. Their happiness was in each other and just living life. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, the only reason why I want to talk about that is that was like, you talked about how she would set you up at the freezer or something at the grocery store to sing.
Yeah. There was a little, I want to say it was a Sunoco station, but it may not have been, but it was on the way to North Manchester on 13. And I think there's a little lake place there now, and it's a machine shop now. But anyway, this was back in the day, when they didn't paint the floors. They were all old and squeaky, and mm-hmm. It was just a neat little place that we would always stop, and they would always stop there, and they would buy us an ice cream out of the little freezer. But when I did that, I had to sing for people. She would set me up and put me on the freezer, and she'd let me sing a song, and then she'd tell me to sing like Tiny Tim and do the tiptoe through the tulips, and wiggle my voice and do all of those things, just because she was so proud of me. I was her boy. Mm-hmm. And that's what she did, and people would stand and listen. I mean, they would just stand and listen, and I would sing for them. So
yeah, but your musical talent really didn't, what came from Mama and Papa.
Right.
Both of them can sing.
Right.
Papa played guitar.
Yeah.
And in the photos that go with the podcast, he's using Papa's guitar that he left.
Yeah.
Dad.
Yeah.
And that's where that kind of stemmed. Where do you remember Papa playing all the time? Or when was that kind of music introduced? Like, when was music introduced to you? Do you know?
Well, it was introduced when I was real young. I can remember I had two different record players. Well, the family did. And when I was real little, which this would have been somewhere around 3 years old. Mm-hmm. And some things I guess you just remember. Mm-hmm. But they had one of the crank up record players. Yeah. And I loved to play that. I thought it was so fun. But the bad part was if I cranked it and it didn't get caught, the thing would come back around and hit me in the nose, and I'd get a bloody nose. And that happened quite often because, I didn't know how that mechanism worked.
Yeah.
So anyway, so they ended up getting rid of that. I mean, they had another record player anyway, but I would play music. Mom and Dad had a few records, and I would play music all day long and stand there by the record player and dance and sing with it. I mean, that was my entertainment. I have always loved music.
Mm-hmm. And it's still, there's pictures, like I said, that go with this podcast because he's collected records all his entire life, which we'll get into, but I gotta have you tell the story about when Tree didn't know how to turn off the record player.
Yeah. And she would come down sometimes we'd go to their house and stay, and sometimes she would come and stay at our house. And this particular day she came to our house. And it's kind of funny, they didn't have anything like that at their house, so she didn't know anything about it. And I put on this song of Johnny Cash, and I cannot remember. I can't remember what that song was, but it would. I fixed it to where it would go back and start over again. Just keep and she babysat that day for me for I don't know how many hours that she heard that song. And the thing about it is she never thought to unplug the record player. But she couldn't figure out how to get it to stop either. And she said, I was never so tired of a song in all my life. She said, but I heard it from the time that your mom left until the time that they come back.
And Grandma was like, why didn't you just
unplug
it?
Oh,
that's funny.
And that was, like I said, that was when I was probably somewhere around 3 years old.
Oh,
3 to 4 years old.
Yeah, that's funny. I could just see you standing there dancing. Well, I was going to say, because when music was introduced to you, you were playing records and stuff, but when was starting to pick up a guitar and play and sing, as far as, did you always want to sing and play, or how was that?
I always wanted to sing, and my dad played guitar, so naturally, you looked at your dad, and that's what you wanted to do. You wanted to be able to play. And so I never learned to play guitar until I was, I think I was 8 or 9 was when I learned to play guitar. And so that was something, that I wanted to do, but I had to work at it. It wasn't something that just came natural. However, I played completely by ear. I don't read music and still don't read music. If that's required, I'm not in the game at all. I just don't. I never understood that. Never got a hold of that.
But I guess, did you grow up playing in church and stuff, or how did that? Because I remember that's how I learned, was playing with you and Papa in church.
Right.
And I didn't know how that was. Was there people around you besides Papa, or did they? I know there's several couples that I could think of off the top of my head that I even grew up around as well. So.
Right. Yeah. At that point, yes, when I started playing guitar, I was in church. There was a time prior to that when our family wasn't in church. And so we would, it didn't matter when family would come, we all sat around and played music. On both sides of the family loves music. So that was a lot of things that we did, when we would go to West Virginia or Kentucky and see family, we would all gather around and everybody would sing music. Most of the time it was somewhere between country and gospel. That was what we sat around and sang, So that's when I loved music my whole life, but it was really different once I got in church and I started singing. Then it got to a point where I was doing a lot of specials, at church, after I learned to play guitar. Before that, Dad would get up and play for me, and I would sing.
I didn't realize that.
Until I got used to playing guitar in front of people, and not being so nervous,
Oh yeah. I didn't realize he played for you at one point in time, which is cool. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yep.
That's fun. Yeah, well, I know when and for those who don't know, as far as how church is structured, most of the time it's like it has like congregational songs, and that's where everybody can sing with it. And then specials are like 1 or 2 people come up and sing a song, and just whatever the Spirit lays on their heart or God lays on their heart. So like that's what you were doing. You were singing specials outside of congregation songs,
right?
And that's really fun. That's I feel like it's cool because I look at my life and that's where I started, and it's funny that it all just kind of stems from that moment. I often wonder like what it would have been if some of that wasn't introduced in your
Right.
life. What would my life look like? Would I ever realize some of the things that I could do, or that just come to us naturally, or anything like that?
Yeah.
But yeah, we used to still. I mean, once in a great, me and Dad will sit down and play.
Right.
But life looks a lot different now with people gone, and people's papa's passed away, and but we all still enjoy music.
Right. Yeah.
And I can remember I used to go downstairs. Papa has this at the house, the finished basement, and he would go down there and play all the time. And he'd play, and he could actually pick the guitar.
Right. Yeah.
And I still haven't got a hold of all that quite yet.
Me either.
Quite yet. But there's, it just comes with playing a lot more and really learning it. But he would play that. I can remember him playing that. And there's once in a great while those memories, you just hear certain pick licks or in your mind or whatever. But he used to play, and I'd go down there and I'd sit and listen to him and play. You guys used to play a lot.
Right.
We used to stay late.
Yeah.
Just sitting around you guys sing. I'd end up falling asleep or whatever. But yeah. Well, in high school, were you traveling and singing yet, or were you? Because you ended up forming a ministry around gospel music.
Right. Right.
And playing and singing, because you play the piano on top of the guitar. When was the piano introduced? I guess I should ask that.
I started playing piano. Let me see. I was in junior high, I think, when I started playing piano. And I think I'm trying to remember how this went, but I was thinking that Mom and Dad kind of rented a piano, and then they ended up my senior year because they helped my brother buy his first car for graduation. Well, probably not his first car, but a car.
Yeah.
And I already had one at that point because I worked at Penguin Point. And, so they bought me the piano in place of helping with the car because it was about the same amount of money. And, but anyway, what I really did was I sat down and tried to figure out chords, and then I confirmed them with a piano player at the church to see if I was correct. And she would show me the difference and show me, and from there I took off with it.
Which is cool.
Yeah, but that was in throughout high school, and I played in church as well, and all of that stuff, and still do. But yeah, that's where it all began. And then when I was 15, that's when I met your mom's mom and dad. My aunt said that they were kind of looking for a guitar player.
Because Mama and Papa sang and traveled.
Right.
So that's a little side story.
And so I went and, to a few practices to see how it would go and stuff. Well, I ended up being with them and traveling with them. And so that would have been when I was 15. And from there on in, there was a lot of people, people at school, they were all involved with this, that, and the other. Well, I was gone all the time. I can remember there was 1 month we had 20 some singing engagements in 1 month.
That's a lot of singing.
That's a lot of singing engagements, when you figure there's only 30 days or 31 days, know. And so we were busy. We traveled a lot. I traveled a lot, and I sang and still kept my grades up because I couldn't do it if I didn't make A's and B's. I had to keep my grades up and everything. So there wasn't a problem with that. Was able to do that and still do what I loved, and that was music.
Yeah, yeah. Well, speaking of grades, I want to give a picture to the listeners of your high school experience with a certain friend of yours named Bubba, who's in the, what was the one? You got to tell the story. I keep having him tell these stories because it's funny. But he was in class and he was trying to cheat on a test or something. You
Yeah.
got to
Yeah.
set this up for people.
Yeah. Well, anything that I was around, Bubba was a good friend of mine, and so we could get in trouble if we were very close together. We could get in trouble if we were far apart. But anyway, but he and another friend was sitting behind me, and
Now, Dad went to Southwood.
we were actually we were in the back of the classroom, and they were on the back rows, the two back rows seated right beside of each other, and I was the next row up. And so, there was a lot of things that happened in that class, but this was probably the most memorable that I can think of. Was they didn't study for the test, and of course I always had to study, and they couldn't, there was no way they could cheat off of me because I was up too far. So they had decided that they would put a sheet where they could look over and just see it over by the window. So we started the test and everything, and there was a puff of wind or something that came along, and when that wind come along, it sucked that sheet right out the window, and my buddy goes, ah, oh, oh. and then after that he goes, he's making all these noises and stuff, and so we're just dying of laughing. We were just dying of laughing, and so I laid my head down on the desk because he was still back there making all these noises. And, oh no, what am I going to do? And all of this stuff. And I couldn't take it. I was dying of laughing, and I knew I didn't want to get in trouble, and because if I got in trouble at school, I was going to get in trouble when I got home. Yeah. That was just the way it worked. You didn't have a reason behind anything. You got in trouble when you got home if you got in trouble at school. And so the teacher comes back, and I'm just dying of laughing. Of course, when Bubba got excited or something, he'd start jiggling. He was a big guy. I mean, I'm not talking. He wasn't what I called a fat guy. He was just a big, big guy,
big bone guy.
Yeah, and but any time that he laughed or anything, his whole body moved. And when he got nervous, his whole body moved, and so it was really funny when the teacher comes back there and he looks down at me and he goes, "Are you okay?" And I just kind of shook my head, no. And so he sends me to the health suite, and then he gets onto them. And in a way, I regret that I wasn't there to hear how that all transpired, but. It was good. It was funny just to see that happen,
There's just so many stories that I just love to have you tell because it's just so funny. I have him tell that as like party jokes when I have a friend over or something because it's just funny. You worked at Penguin and Point, and that one day you were working at Penguin and Point, and he comes in. You gotta tell that story, and then we'll move on to back to music ministry.
Okay.
Please tell that story.
Well, when I worked at Penguin Point, I worked there through high school, and but Bubba had a lot of free time on his hands. I mean, he would do things crazy. And one night he told me, he says, "One of these days I'm going to just shock you." He said, "I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing." He says, "But you will know it's me." And so I was I think that particular night I was running the fryers and the grill, and I hear somebody come up and I could hear him. You could always hear who the girls were talking to, when somebody come up to place an order. You could tell. You could hear everything. It wasn't like we didn't have headphones at that time. You had a little speaker thing that you clicked down and you talked, and then you raised the other button and you could hear what they said, what they responded with. So anyway, I hear this strange noise. And I hear this laughter, and I'm like, I said, I think I know who that is. And so he's out there in the car, and then all of a sudden I hear this sheep. And it does this bah, bah. And I thought, oh no. I said, I know exactly who that is. So he pulls around, and he had borrowed a sheep from a farmer.
Borrowed. And that's it, very loosely borrowed. And so on the way into Penguin Point, he passes this farm. And you had to know him because he would do whatever it took to get a laugh. It didn't matter what it was. He didn't always think of consequences that could take place, And so he borrowed this sheep from a pasture and got it in his car and brought it down through there just so he could pull this joke over on me at Penguin Point with that sheep. Yeah. I mean, that was the kind of person that he was. He would do anything to get a laugh, you know. And so that was really funny when he brought that sheep in there, and it's making all of its noises and everything, and he's like just poking it with a stick.
Yeah, he's poking it with a stick to make it do it, and then he's back there laughing. You could hear him laughing and all of this stuff. So yeah. He would do anything. There was nothing that you could put past Bubba. He would do it. And I asked him, I said, well, where did you get that? I said, you don't live on a farm. He said, no. He said, I don't live on a farm. He said, but he says, I do know how to get a sheep to get in the car.
Gosh,
so
I can only imagine.
He got the sheep in the car. He says, and I'll be taking it back here shortly. He said, and nobody will never know. so
funny.
So that was he wasn't the best influence. But he was a good guy. He never done anything to harm anybody or hurt anybody.
And Mamaw loved him.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I can only... Now, you didn't tell all these stories to Papaw that happened.
No.
Gosh. But you know what? Papaw was just as ornery.
Yeah, but it was okay for him. That's one of those... don't do as I say, not as I do. That was kind of the motto we grew up with.
But it's funny. It's funny. Well, okay. So now that I sidetracked us, because that's just a funny story I had to have you tell. So you're decided to do music ministry at this point. You're traveling and doing it with Mama and Papa on my mom's side.
Right.
And what was that look like for you? Ministry in general is something that sometimes it falls in your lap.
Right.
And it almost fell in your lap in the way that it goes, but you eventually knew that this was what you were supposed to do.
Right.
In your life. For us, and how I was raised and how everybody comes to faith a little bit differently in their life, but this is my life growing up, I can remember. So this is how I've always known, but it becomes a real thing individually. It's it's no longer your mom and dad's faith. It's your faith. You have to decide this is this. But you knew God had a calling on your life. Before we move on, what is a calling? How would you describe a calling to somebody who maybe don't understand or has never heard that before?
Right. Well, for me, the calling is something that only God can put you into. Something of that nature. if it's not something that he has instrumented and put into place, you'll never survive, because just because you are dealing with all Christian people and all those things, you're still dealing with people. And
People are people,
and
no matter
people
what.
are people, whether they are somebody who has a faith or somebody who doesn't. You put two people in a room, they're not agreeing on everything.
Right.
And they never will.
Right.
You know, so you have to, in something of this nature of going and doing ministry, one of the things that I say is, if God's placed me here, he will see me through what I need to do, you know. And I was very much one of those, and still am one of those people, that if God's not orchestrating it, I don't want to be a part of it.
Right. Yeah. And like, especially something like a ministry.
Right, exactly.
Because, you know, you traveled, you went on to do your own thing and create a band after you decided. I don't know, what was the dynamic of like, okay, I think I'm, you know, maybe Mama and Papa were ready to just kind of take a seat for a little while, and then, you know, what was that dynamic when that happened?
Well, actually what began to happen is I started developing my songwriting skills. I recorded a song on our very first tape as Heaven's Echoes that I wrote at 15. And it worked well for the style that we were singing. Then I had another one that I recorded a song on that was, you know, was mine, that I had written. And then we did a full tape of all 10 songs on that album, were songs that I wrote. But as my songwriting developed, the songs were not something that a group like we were singing. We sang mostly Southern gospel. My songs developed into more of, I had some Southern gospel, I had some blues, I had some country style gospel. You know, when all of the different elements like that began to change, I realized that we weren't going to be able to do the songs. And I thought, that's when I decided that I needed to take off on my own. And that was in 91 or 92 that I took off and decided to do something, you know, on my own, because I didn't figure, if God has given me that music, it needed to be heard.
And I'm sure Mama and Papa, it was hard for them.
It was
when
hard.
when you left, but I think they knew that if it was God, it was right.
Well, and there was a little bit of rocky road. I'm not going to lie about that. We had some disputes. We had some things that you know, but that's going to be, any time that something like that takes place, there's going to be some hardships. There's going to be some things that you go through, but you go through that. It all works out. They continued to travel. They traveled and sang. They had another individual, another lady that come along, and she played and she sang, and so everything worked out.
Yeah.
It might have been God's plan. It might not have been God's plan the way everything transpired.
Yeah.
But God still works it out.
Right.
And he did, you know, and that's the thing. They went on to sing, and we even sang at some of the same venues together, you know, on the same bill at night. God knows what he's doing.
Yeah. Well, and that's a perfect example. I think it's easy to look at these huge ministries now. Like, for example, I mean, Vestal Goodman and they had issues when they decided to try this and try that. The thing is, ministry isn't always clean.
No.
As far as like how everything, you think that there's no disagreements or no anything, which is a lot of any kind of ministry, anybody looking on the outside, looking in, they don't always see that until then. It's almost like a surprise, which that's a whole other conversation, but it's not. We're people, and everybody's people. And no matter if you're in ministry or if you're in rock and roll, you've got disputes. It happens. But that's a great example to show that, no matter what you are doing in life, whatever it is, things are going to happen, but things will work out. Things are, you have to follow God's will as far as, especially in ministry, you don't just follow your own. Sometimes you do jump out on a limb and then you realize, oh, that wasn't the right thing. That's not quite yet. Or maybe that's not what God had planned. But so you formed a group.
Right.
Tell us about what it was called, who it was called, and all the stuff.
Well, we at the time we formed it, there was just 3 of us. And we tried to keep 3 the whole time, but it was difficult throughout the years. But we started it out, and because I was kind of what I want to say, the head person, I was the vocalist, as well as putting up some of the forefront to make it happen, and those types of things.
Because it takes money to do this.
It takes money,
whether you're in ministry or trying to start something outside.
Exactly.
That's also another thing to know, is like, it don't just come.
Right.
Like, it don't just show up. It really takes a lot of work and money.
And money, yes. And so when we started, I went with my publishing company is Shining Stream Publishing, and through BMI, and so when we put things together, I said, why don't we go with Lou Hunt and Shining Stream, and that would be the name of the band, Shining Stream, and that worked well for quite a few years, because we had 3 people, and we might lose one along the way and then pick up somebody else, and that type of thing. But yeah, that's what we went with, and then later on we changed it over to, because it was just the 2 of us, Brett Webb and myself, we changed it over to Hunt and Webb, and that's kind of how that transpired.
And you did. How long were you in that particular ministry? Now, this is a lifelong thing. Like, you're always in music ministry, but really traveling and doing what you were doing.
Let me see. We actually disbanded in 2005. So it would have been 91
to 2000.
To 2000. During that time, I mean, we done everything from videos to TV to records. We put out several of those. Majority all were original material. When we started with just the 3 of us at the very beginning, Steve Cooper was along with us, and he played guitar, and Brett played the bass, and I played the keyboards, and we had some really good times. We really did. We had a lot of traveling. When we first started, we didn't have the kids. We didn't have you guys, and it was easy. And then later on, we had purchased a motorhome and was traveling in it. And Mom tried to go as much as she could, because she would handle the booking, helping with the booking, helping with when we got into the church, she would set up our product table, and she took care of the sales, all of that, So she was a vital part of our ministry. But once you guys came along, it was more difficult for her to travel with small children.
Right. And I think Mom, her name's Kim, and I call her Mom, but Mom is always working behind the scenes. And trust me, I've tried to get her on the podcast. I tried to get her on this episode, but she will not do it. She's more of a, I'll stay behind the scenes and like do all the work. But
Yeah.
Mom works really hard, and I can remember her working really hard behind the scenes of the ministry. I mean, when the sound person or what, she'd fill in the sound and she'd do all the kinds of stuff. But it takes two when it comes to ministry sometimes.
Right.
Now, there's a lot of single people who are doing ministry. So I'm not
Right.
saying that, but when you're married, I don't think people realize all the work that really is behind a ministry.
Exactly.
And what happens at home and what happens within traveling and what happens, all the things that it takes to actually put on something like that. And I don't want to say put on, because it's not a
show.
No.
But
You learn to entertain in a way that
Right.
brings people into the story and
Right.
into Christ to deliver it.
Exactly.
But it's not a put on
right.
for the audience.
Well, and the other thing behind that, Lauren, is, you talk about the behind the scenes. There is so much. When we traveled for a long time, everything that we had here at the house was put on the back burner. Mm-hmm. And I traveled. I continued to travel a few years after we disbanded, mm-hmm. as just a solo artist, and your mom would take care of running sound, and of course you girls was older then, and it wasn't as difficult, and then we even done some stuff together, mm-hmm. and even with Ashley
Yeah.
went and we done some dates together. But the thing about it is yes, it takes so much more, and also you don't have the time to keep up. Like I worked a full-time job, and then we were gone almost every weekend. And sometimes during the week we had engagements. And so when that takes place, your house, your material things kind of sacrifice a little bit. Mm-hmm. And so when I finally stopped traveling, it was like I had some catch up to do to get our house back into order, because we wasn't here to take care of everything, whether it was just freshening up the paint or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. All of that was set aside for the sake of the ministry. Mm-hmm. I don't regret any of that. Mm-mm. That's the ministry came first, mm-hmm. and you talk about that, but what does that look like as an individual? I had to sacrifice family things, mm-hmm. reunions.
Yeah.
I had to sacrifice a lot of things because we had engagements, and when you're doing this type of ministry, you have to take those engagements, or mm-hmm. people, when they call, they'll say, I won't call them again because
they said no
last time. No, they've got they've got something else they need to do that day, or what have you. And people, there was at that time there was a lot of musicians and traveling ministries, and so if you got out, mm-hmm. and they didn't, and you said no too many times, you were shooting yourself in the foot.
Right.
And we had and I'm not saying we were not in it for the money. Mm. I never set a charge the whole time that we traveled.
And there's nothing wrong with setting a charge.
No, there's nothing
at
wrong
all.
with it.
But this was how you ran your...
This was how I ran mine. But I will say that you sacrificed, when you run a ministry that way, you sacrificed to make that ministry go, because you may drive 9 hours and get $25.
Yeah.
Or you may drive 2 hours and get $600. And anybody that would look at that today, they'd say, well, that's not much. No, it was the same thing back then.
Right.
You still had your wear and tear on your vehicles, breakdown of equipment that had to be replaced. You're recording a new album at over $10,000 a whack. There was a lot of things, and now you can't touch doing an album like we did back then. It's 20 some thousand.
That's
to
crazy.
do that.
It is crazy. And
Yeah.
I think that's something we should have a separate conversation more about behind the ministry. I think
Right.
that would be really good to talk about, because there's so many aspects to ministry that people don't have the conversation about.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with having the conversation. So I'm gonna cut it there,
Okay.
because I'm like, there's going to be more conversation with that, and I
Okay.
want to have a full episode, or maybe something along somewhere
Right.
down the road.
That's good.
I wanted to talk because you stopped music ministry. Now, there was some things that happened that made that happen. I mean, health or something beyond that, and other things. But you stopped ministry as far as the music ministry, like you were doing for a long time.
Yes.
For a long time. And that was really hard on you, because that was I don't want to say your identity, but
But it was.
It was.
Yeah.
And that was what you were doing for Christ. That's how you felt useful.
Right.
And can you talk about just that moment in time before we're going to take you to where he's at right now, and then we'll have to do some more episodes down the road. But like, tell me about that time in your life and what that looked like. I can remember the time.
Right.
As far as because I was 5 at that point, and then from till about, there was 10 to 15 years growing up that I can remember on and off still singing. That wasn't the thing you sang with your CDs or you sang with playing and doing your own thing, but it wasn't like it was back then. And for somebody who's always done that, it can feel like taking a backward step. As
Yes.
much as it's a ministry, sometimes you still get in your own way
Yeah.
in your mind of putting it as this big thing. Talk to me about that.
Well, and there was some things that happened. Number one, our area is difficult to get bookings in, so the majority of our bookings were out of state. So that made a huge difference. Then, as my health progressed and began to get worse, that didn't help matters any.
Mm-hmm.
But we also had a recording with a my word is not coming out, a recording contract.
Oh yeah.
And when that recording contract was done, the record company did not hold up to all of their promises. And so that made it that I began to get really discouraged, and I would even use the word bitter. Mm-hmm. Because like I said earlier, I pray about everything, and I felt like that was exactly where I needed to be. I prayed about that, and part of the thing was because they offered all of these things. Mm-hmm. And then when they didn't come through, I thought, man, did I hear God wrong? What in the world? Why? What did I do? Mm-hmm. Where did I miss the boat here? Mm-hmm. And it was several years later, mm-hmm. when God dealt with me, and he told me, he said, it wasn't something you did. Mm-hmm. People are people. Mm-hmm. And if they don't hold up their end of the bargain, it still affects you. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that you did something wrong. And so I got comfort from that. And I can tell you that every day of my life, I probably miss the traveling and singing.
Oh, yeah.
That was,
Still to this day.
Still to this day, if I could do it,
you would.
I would do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
In a minute.
Yeah.
Because that's my heart.
Yeah.
It was that type of ministry. Mm-hmm. But things changed, and my life began to, as things changed, I found out that God had something else in store for me. And that's where I'm at today as pastoring a church.
Right. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it don't make sense when you're in it. That's the thing. And that's a whole other conversation.
That's a whole other conversation.
Is sometimes it doesn't feel like where you're at or what's happening, it don't make sense. And then you get to this point and you turn around and you're like, this is where you planned?
Right.
This is crazy. Now, I want to, those few years and those moments when you're I would use the word questioning, because I can remember you were a different dad.
Yeah.
You were a good father. That's
right.
But your outlook on different things were different.
Yeah.
Nothing bad. It was just discouragement. It was discouragement,
yes,
and it was different. And you're trying to get comfortable being home all the time and comfortable. You and Mom both. I know it was hard on Mom too, because that was your guys' life for 15 years and beyond, because you still did it on and off.
Right.
But it wasn't like it was. And what was God dealing with you during that time, or what was you trying to deal with during that time before you got the calling to preach?
Right. Well, the thing about it is I am not one that can just go into a church, sit down, get up and leave, and have nothing, not be involved. God didn't wire me that way. He showed me that I have a message to tell. I have something that I need to let people know about. And having Christ in my life, number one, but also the way that he has worked in my life. And so I began teaching Sunday school. I taught Sunday school. I song leaders. I was praise and worship leader. I went from one thing after another.
Were you a deacon at one point in time as well?
I was set aside to be a deacon.
But it was just trying to be more involved.
But I was on the boards of churches. I was treasurer. It was just all of these things. And it was like putting a round peg in a square hole.
It don't work.
It don't work. And so eventually, I began to notice that God had been really revelating my mind throughout all the times that I was teaching adult Sunday school class and all of those things. I began writing. And I was writing devotionals. I was, matter of fact, I still want to finish that so I can do a book. But, at that time, though, it was just, God was working with me to prepare me for what he had that I would have never expected. If somebody would have said, you're going to be a minister, a pastor of a church, I would have said, you're crazy.
Right.
That's not me. I'm music.
Yeah.
Remember, I sing.
Yeah, and I will say the difference between standing up and giving for those who don't understand or have never experienced it, giving a talk, that's how you would describe that feeling at the moment, when it's opposite. So the difference between, filling in with testimonies in between a song.
Right.
This is how I would describe putting on it's not a concert, but filling that time that somebody has paid you to be there. So you're both being led by Christ in both situations. Like you're really listening to what God wants you to say, but it's different than doing something that you've always done for 1,000 times over.
Right.
And you're comfortable in that position.
Right.
And he was like, hey, get out of the boat. Just like the Bible story said, get out of the boat, and you're going to have to walk on water for a minute because it's going to be very uncomfortable.
Right.
And it's that story is so true, because the moment you start looking around, I can remember the early days of you starting to preach. You were more nervous.
Right.
You were trying to find your footing within that.
Right.
But I feel like when watching you on the outside looking in, I could see the transition happening. It was hard. I mean, it was not easy even within there. But it was just the fact that seeing you now where you're at, it's amazing. Sorry, the phone's ringing. But it's amazing where you're at now.
Right.
And so we're gonna cut it here in a minute, but tell me what you're doing now and how are you feeling within being called to preach and leading a church and just that ministry where you're at now.
Right. Well, as you said, when I was doing the singing ministry, I would go in, I would do my ministry, and I would leave. Mm-hmm. You see, now as a pastor of a church, you go in, you do your ministry, and you're tied to however many people that go to your church. Mm-hmm. And so it's a whole different thing. You don't just go in and leave, but you go in, and as soon as you take the pastorship, then you are tied to these people. You're responsible to these people. You're responsible to bring them what God gives you for them.
And I will say that even in music ministry, whether you decide you're going to do a special one day or you decide that you're going to sing a song or whatever, or share your testimony, that person too is responsible for what they bring forward.
Exactly.
Whether you are just sharing a song, singing in congregation, because it's important where your heart and your mind's at. I'm not always in that place.
Right.
But it's a muscle you have to learn to grow and to build. Sorry, go ahead, Daddy.
Yeah, so that's the main thing. That's the main difference in the two. You're still bringing them Jesus Christ and his word and all of those things, But you have a responsibility to them people. Mm-hmm. You're standing there representing Jesus Christ with his word and being correct, doing it out of love, not out of hatred or out of, I've told you guys 1,000 times about this. Why are you still doing this? Mm-hmm. That's not the way that Jesus did things. Jesus did everything in love. Mm-hmm. He was stern. Mm-hmm. He could be stern with it.
He also had a sense of humor.
Yeah, but he was still bringing the message that needed to be told. And I look at myself today as being a pastor of a church. I see the difference in going and sharing, and now just being like a family.
Right.
Right. Our church is now, it has grown. We average 60 to 70 people, and it's like a big family. It's not like discord or anything in between. Oh, there can be times, that's going to happen. But the thing about it is, as a pastor, they look up to you for leadership, for guidance, and that's where I'm responsible. I'm responsible.
Mm-hmm. But one thing I love about growing up in this kind of thing, I've sat under pastors, and I've sat out under pastors that aren't my father, that are, being there and actually like seeing. I have sat under amazing pastors. Right. That's the thing. And everything that has led us to where we are now in the church of where we're at, looking back, God's plan has been so good. It was hard,
yes,
but it was where we're at. Do we want to say the church? Want to say
yeah.
Bethesda Free Will Baptist in Andrews, Indiana,
right,
is where you pastor. Right. And one thing you don't put yourself on a pedestal, and our people in the church I would say, because they say it 1,000 times, what they do, they feel like you're just one of them.
Right.
And you mentioned something about saying what you're meant to say, and being stern. Everything that God gives you you have to deal with first in your life.
Right, exactly.
It steps on your toes first.
Yes.
And I think I feel like that's a way that you dial your, dial your sermon, because you're talking about things that you have lived through and you have done, and you're honest. That's the thing. You're not trying to put on saying I'm a perfect pastor, because you're the first one that says I mess up all the time.
Right. Exactly.
I want to do good, but I'm not perfect. So to put me on a pedestal is not the right thing for you or anybody else, because
Right.
I will disappoint. You've said it.
Right.
I will disappoint because I'm not perfect, but I try to do the right thing.
Right. Exactly.
And I think that's a great place to leave the episode. I wanted to end it with one thing, and it's just random. I do talk a lot to, talking about generations and the difference in generations and how do we bring generations together. What would you say is probably the biggest thing you've learned in your ministry life? To maybe there's a young person who's trying to start a ministry, who feels like God's leading them, and it doesn't seem like it's coming together, or it seems really hard right now, or they're in a place where they didn't think it was supposed to go, but this is where it's at. Whatever it is, what advice would you give a young person? And maybe they're not in what we would define as a music ministry or whatever, but maybe they're getting a new job.
Right.
And they're nervous, or maybe they're like, I don't know where I should go or what I should do. What is the advice that you would give somebody? It could be young or old at this point.
Right. God always has a plan. He always has your best interest at heart. You are his child. And it'd be like any father. He loves his children, and he wants the best for his children. And sometimes it's the rough roads that sharpen us. There's an old, the iron sharpens iron, that type of thing. And at some point, it's like a diamond. It becomes a diamond because of all the pressure placed upon it. Mm-hmm. That's the same thing that we have to look at. He is not putting us through something that we cannot tolerate. We can tolerate it. It may not be easy. It may not look like I'm getting anywhere, but he has a plan for us. Always pray, always follow his leadership, and it's going to take you sometimes to places and you're going to go, what in the world am I doing here? Mm-hmm. But no matter where you're at, there will be somebody that receives from you because it was in God's plan for you to be there.
That's good. Well, Daddy-O, I think we did pretty good. I think we got more comfortable as it was going. It's weird because we have conversations all the time, but never with a mic in front of our face. So it's like we had to get a little bit comfortable. Yeah. No, that was good, Daddy-O. Well, thank you for being here.
Yes,
and if you want to, you have a page. Will you want to tell on Facebook? Lou Hunt.
Lou Hunt Family Ministries.
Yeah, and he's really been trying to get that started back up again.
Right.
He had done it a little bit, and then health, and then everything with family, and it's a lot. But he does some devotions on there if that's your cup of tea, if that's the thing that you like, or you want to really invest in as far as taking some time and reading a devotion. He does some short devotions throughout the time, and as he feels like it, as he's able to, and that's cool. So go and follow that, and you'll probably see some old of us singing. Oh goodness, that was a long time ago, but we'll have to have more segments on there. And but thank you for coming on, Daddy. I love you.
Thank you. Love you too.
I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, because I sincerely did. I am incredibly inspired every single time someone walks into my studio and sits down. I am able to look in their eyes, and I am welcomed into their story, and that is priceless. It is a great honor and also a great responsibility to think that when they said yes to come onto my podcast, that meant that they trusted me. They trusted me enough to allow me to help tell their story, and to me, that means the world. So thank you to my guest. If you'd like to connect with my guest, if they left any or mentioned any of social media or websites, it will be in the description box below, as well as on my Facebook and Instagram if you want to see what they look like. I have a portrait and a small little write-up along with anything they mentioned within this podcast. So I hope today that you have been inspired to look at your own life and to see that just living your life is important. But I want to inspire you as well to actually document your life. You have an importance in this world, and I want you to use your voice. So it doesn't have to look like 6 pages in a journal or being on a podcast. It can look like a line a day. If you'd like to connect with me, make sure you head over to hereinmytime.com. That is where I have a bi-weekly blog, as well as some of my portfolio work with photography, and where you can also contact me through email at hereinmytime@gmail.com, as well as follow me on Facebook and Instagram. This is at hereinmytime as well, here.inmytime for Instagram, and I have weekly content. Thank you so much for your support. It means the world. And until next week,